Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now in today's video we are going to look at this Bestech Knives Hedron designed by Ostap Hel. Now in a prior video we had a preliminary look at this knife as well as a number of other offerings from Bestech's 2020 lineup. This did come out about mid-year 2020 and I've now at this point had a bunch of field use with this particular knife. And I can tell you the Hedron is a nice sized, well-performing, just sort of small companion blade. Now this is I would say belt knife size. It could also be a slightly larger EDC option if you like an EDC fixed blade. And this knife has performed very well. Now as the United States service area representative for Bestech Knives, I can say that after testing this and kind of hard using it for a smaller knife, I am extremely pleased with the performance. Now this model here being in G10, this model here being in micarta. And if you would like to see a detailed review of the micarta, I strongly suggest checking out Carlos over at Daily Carry Solutions, where he puts his Hedron in the micarta to good hard use and has a lot of great talking points along with it. But with that said, I got my own field work to do, and if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what I'm about to get into, do me a favor, stay tuned. So here, the Bestech Hedron in some good quality field use. Now the first thing is, due to the nice, thin, and lightweight profile, this Hedron is going to be a wonderful small food prep knife. So using it here for a number of different food prep tasks, very simple and basic, yet very effective. I do greatly like the feel on this hand. The edge is nice and sharp, nicely refined, and the D2 tool steel will do a nice job resisting corrosion. But if you've been watching my channel, you know I always enjoy some good hard field use. Now there's a few reasons for this. First of all is my mentality. I want to do some of the hardest use tasks first to test the overall edge retention. It doesn't do me much good going into the carving tasks right away because that won't tell me the overall quality of the steel, the heat treat, and the edge retention. And as a Bestech service representative, I do want to test their fixed blades fairly hard. At this point, Bestech only having 2 fixed blades in their lineup, so it's a little bit unproven, but at the same time they have used D2 tool steel for their knife lineup for a long time. So putting the D2 tool steel on this Hedron to some good hard use, pounding down through wood, and at occasions hitting some good stubborn knots. That's the thing, when you have a knife of this size, it's not necessarily the longest, it can't span too wide of a log, but at the same time you can definitely do some good batoning. Personally, I really like a knife of this size as a companion blade to either a larger knife, an axe, or a saw. So testing the knife in a hard use scenario, even if it's not its true intended purpose, it definitely has some great benefits. Time and time again, wailing on the tip of the knife, stressing it through the woods, and at times hammering on the handle, you'll see here the Bestech Hedron really having no problem at all. But continuing on with some hard use tasks, I always wonder about stabbing for a couple of reasons. First is, what is the overall penetration of the knife? How far can it push into the wood, and what job can it do splitting the wood? Well, here you'll see the Hedron actually doing a very nice job splitting through the wood. It takes a little bit of work and a little bit of effort, and it's not a perfect test, but at the same time doing a nice job getting a crack in the wood and allowing me to split it into pieces. Second, what does the lockup feel like? Is it secure in my hands? Can I do this work without any danger? Well, with the Hedron, you definitely need to be careful. First off is the handle, even though it's G10 and has some traction, is still a little bit slick. It's not the most secure grip, and there is a micarta option, only the micarta 2 is polished, so you do need to be a little bit careful. Second, there is no real guard. Even though this has a very small and subtle guard, it's not very effective. And between your hand slipping and the idea that there's no real guard, you definitely need to be quite careful. But third, stabbing tasks also show the durability and quality of the heat treat. Here, stabbing through the wood time and time again, twisting on the knife, torquing on the knife, and giving it a hard time. Well, guess what? The Hedron did a great job, and I can tell you this D2 is nicely heat treated. And so now that we've got past some of the harder tests, it's a great opportunity to get into more of the carving. This is where you really learn about the edge retention. So at this point, no edge damage, no deformation, and getting into these carving tasks, well, you'll see here, it does a fairly nice job. Now you can use a couple of different grips for this Hedron. Here you'll see putting my thumb over the top of the spine and getting some good controlled carving. There is some mild jimping, which is nice, and also a rounded spine to aid in comfort. But then transitioning into the hammer grip, you'll see now I'm able to get a little more push, a little more bite, and dig deeper and deeper into the wood. Taking some significant bite and really getting some heavy curls here, this is going to make some nice tinder / kindling to start my fire. And I always like to carve down some fat wood. There's a couple of different reasons. First is fat wood is very hard. You'll see the golden amber on the inside. That can be very difficult with an inferior edge, but the Hedron doing a very nice job. And the other thing is, well, fat wood's just a great way to start your fire. It really gets your tinder pile blazing, so getting some nice curls and little chunks is a great way to get things started. And I always take some larger pieces too and get them ready for my tinder pile. But then again, using the knife and getting some real fine little fluff, it's easy to do with the blade, but you'll never be able to do that with the rounded off spine. And finally, gathering up some grasses. This is one of the best tinder sources I have laying around my property. Now I do harvest it quite a bit, so you see there's not too much left, but the Hedron here doing a very nice controlled job and easily slicing through these grasses. They're not extremely thin, they can be a little bit tough, but the Hedron doing a real nice job helping me gather my tinder sources. Now with a rounded spine, it is useless to try some scraping of my ferro rod. I can tell you it definitively will not do it, and I really don't like using the blade for that purpose. But here, just starting my fire and getting it going, well, the Hedron was definitely instrumental in preparing my fire and getting it going this afternoon. Now there's no doubt that a lot of people will use something like the Hedron in this size class for some basic utility tasks. So here, doing some slicing of rope, you'll see for the most part the Hedron doing a nice job blowing right through the rope. At an 1/8 inch, it should do a pretty good job slicing. But I did struggle just a little bit with some of the push cuts. I think part of this is just my particular technique. There is a little bit of a belly on the forward edge of the blade, and I found that was a little bit more effective. Because the handle is not very long and at my particular working angle, it did require me to keep my hands out of the way and bear down on the forward portion of the blade. So here you'll see doing a little bit of work, rocking the blade around and trying to take some slices at it. It did make it through the rope, and a little bit of a sawing technique definitely helped. But what about something a little bit stiffer? Here you'll see I'm trying to get down through some hose. Now this hose can be pretty tough. Even extremely capable knives can struggle in this test. But again, bearing down on the hose and using a little bit of twisting and persuasion, I definitely got it to go. And even furthermore, doing some pull cuts and really forcing my way through, this is a great test of the overall edge capability. Now even after all the hard use earlier in my testing, you'll see the edge is definitely capable of getting through the hose. Now with a shorter handle, it can be a little bit tough to get the proper leverage, but with some persuasion and persistence, you can definitely get the Hedron to do the work. So for me, the Hedron is a great blade, everything from your food prep all the way through your fire prep, as a nice little companion blade and even those utility tasks. Now after all that use, how was the edge retention? Well, you can see a little bit of snags. I had a couple of rolls, no chips, just a little bit of rolling, and definitely some snags when I do this standard paper test. Not a big deal. I know it's something I can fix, and the fact of the matter that the blade's not chunked out will aid in my ability to get a good working edge back on this knife. And when you look up close, you can clearly see there is no true edge damage. Most of what is happening is almost microscopic. So even though it's not cleanly slicing through the paper, it's still a close to perfect edge. A little touch up on a strop or a ceramic rod can go a long way, and because this is D2 tool steel, it might be a little bit tough to get that edge back. So you'll see I took an initial pass just cleaning up the edge, trying to first align the edge with the strop, and then getting a little bit of a bitey tooth in the blade by running it over the ceramic rod. Sometimes D2 can benefit from having just a little bit of a toothy edge, so I'm going in a little bit of reverse order, first with the strop and then the ceramic rod. And you can see that I did make a vast improvement in the overall edge. Here you can see it's doing a pretty good job making it through the paper, but I still had some snags. Not a big deal, it just means I needed a little more time, and I did run a number of passes again on the ceramic rod and on the strop, and you'll see I made a very dramatic improvement. And looking closer here at the blade, it was able to cut through the paper with ease, and my edge is good and back to almost factory condition. And so real briefly here, just rolling in some knives that you may be familiar with. So here we have an SE4. You can see that the Hedron is in overall blade length about the same, except for the fact that the SE has that little finger choil. You may have, I'd say, maybe 1/4 of an inch less blade length on the Hedron. But here you have the Battle Horse Knives Woodsman Pro. So you can see here a saber ground knife with, again, just a similar overall blade size and somewhat similar profile. On the Hedron, you do end up with that unsharpened swedge at the top, but again, being a flat grind with that saber, a high saber grind. And another knife that you may be familiar with, here you have a Mora knife. This is the Craft line. So again, just some similar offerings in terms of overall blade size, just to show you where the Hedron does fall in line with the rest of these. And the one thing that I would like to point out is you can see that the Hedron really having a very slim profile comparatively. The handle is a little bit smaller. It's actually also thinner. So when you look at the actual thickness on each one of these other knives, you will see they are considerably thicker. So that makes the Hedron a very, I would say, like low profile knife. It's not going to be, taking up a ton of space in your pocket. You could use it as a neck knife and it would be fairly comfortable and leave, I would say, like minimal printing. So very cool in terms of size and also compact nature. The Hedron is definitely sweet. And so here, again, we have the Hedron, and you can see it side by side with Bestech's first fixed blade in their lineup. This is the Heidi Blacksmith #1. So again, stepping it up in size, you'll see that this first offering was very, very small, very, very compact. Well, it's not to say that the Hedron itself is not compact. In fact, it is quite a small knife overall. Good ergonomics. I do like it. I think for some of those harder tasks, it's a little bit thin in the handle, and the handle is just slightly short. But again, that's not really the true intended purpose for a knife like this. I'm really taking this knife, pushing it beyond some of its capabilities, and I wouldn't even say beyond. I'm just saying showing some limits and trying to find them, and quite frankly, at this point, didn't really find anything of substantial limit to this knife. Now, Bestech has been doing a great job with their Kydex. As you look here, a good positive click. Almost no rattle. I mean, you really have to work to rattle this knife. It's secure, it fits very well, and I do very much so trust this Kydex. So a knife like this, to me, is going to be a perfect candidate for an inverted carry on a pack strap. Now, the one thing that limits your ability to do that a little bit is this particular loop. If you were to swap this out with something like, say, for example, a Blade Tech Lock or Molly Lock, that would give you the ability to put this on a pack strap. So overall, definitely a good quality and I would say serviceable sheath. You don't necessarily need to go and change it out, and in fact, I would say that this is about perfect, where again, a very small, thin, and compact profile. This is not going to take up a lot of real estate. You're going to barely know you have it. You could keep it in your pocket, you could put it on a pack, you could put it on your belt, and no matter what you do, it's going to be a good, comfortable fit. And so you can see after all of that use, this knife still looks great. I love the Bestech finishes. They've been doing a wonderful job with their knife finishes, their blades, and their overall fit and finish, and everything that they've been doing. I have been very impressed, and it's been great to see them evolving and the iterations they've gone through. But this here being their sort of standard, I would call this a black wash or stone washed finish. Very nice, looks good, nice soft jimping overall. It is not going to tear up your thumb. It's just comfortable. Nice little ramp here. This knife indexes very well, and the fit and finish is just wonderful. So the Hedron here being a nice little offering, I greatly enjoy it, and the fact that even after all this use, we have no finish, real significant, I would say, finish damage, and even the edge is still just about perfect. Very nice, nicely done. A little bit of touch up on the ceramic rods and the strop, but this thing is ready to go. Now, I do enjoy their choice of hardware. This is a little bit different. The one thing that you do get that I like is, even though this hardware is a little bit different than the standard, it does have the ability to get tools on both sides. So you can get your star bit on here on both sides, which is going to aid in your ability to take the knife apart if you want to. And it is quite light. Overall, just not too heavy. I would have to look inside to see if there was any skeletonizing in order to lose a little bit of weight, but I can tell you this is quite balanced, and in fact, here just about neutrally balanced right where you want to index, so that's nice. And the entire tang from basically the tip all the way through the pommel, beautifully rounded out. You can see it is a little bit of exposed on the top and on the bottom, and then around the back side with a hidden lanyard hole. So in here, very subtle, but you do have a lanyard hole basically in the back, so it looks like they're using a little bit of a pin there as a pass-through. You can get a small lanyard on here, and I would suggest it. This is essentially a full 4-fingered grip, with the one caveat being, if you get back a little bit or you had slightly larger hands, you may want a small lanyard on there just to aid in some additional grip. Sometimes I like putting a lanyard where you can get a little extra purchase on the knife, a little extra security, and that works out pretty well. But again, looking through the rest of the construction, everything machined extremely well. The plunge lines look great. The secondary bevel is even, nicely done, good and sharp out of the box. The finish is just wonderful. Everything nicely rounded and contoured. The handle feels wonderful. Not a lot in the way of hot spots. So between good quality design and very nice manufacturing and machining, this Hedron is definitely a plus in my book. So yes, the Bestech Knives Hedron. Overall, I gotta say, I do very much like this. Now, again, a little bit smaller for me in my typical field use, but again, a perfect companion blade. I could see this pairing up very nicely with an axe or a saw, or even a larger sort of chopping blade if you're into that. This Hedron performing extremely well. I have to say I'm very happy at the heat treat. I think it performed extremely well with pretty good punishment. I mean, for a little knife, I definitely was giving this thing a hard time. No problem at all. It's still in perfect condition. Now, the edge, a little bit of stropping. D2 is always going to be a little bit difficult, but I got this back to definitely good quality serviceable edge and ready for future field use. So again, I'd like to say nice job to Bestech Knives and Ostap Hel. Just a beautiful design here. Very fitting, fits a nice roll within the Bestech fixed blade lineup. They don't have too many of them, but so far what they've produced I have greatly enjoyed. So alright guys, thanks for stopping by. Hope you like what you saw. Hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.